Welcome to Good News Conversations. I'm your host, Gino Gutierrez. This show is presented by the Jewish Community Center of Greater Albuquerque. If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe, and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Be sure to see the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source. Hi everyone, I'm Gino Gutierrez. This show is sponsored by the Jewish Community Center of Greater Albuquerque. In this week's episode of Good News Conversations, we do a recap of the good news stories we've covered over the month of October, including an 86-year-old that went on a hot air balloon ride, a mobility clinic for amputees in the Albuquerque area, and stories that we've covered in our Good News Roundup.
Looking for a place where everyone in your family can thrive? The Jewish Community Center of Greater Albuquerque is your local hub for wellness, learning, and connection. Whether it's our state-of-the-art fitness center, early childhood programs, or vibrant cultural events, there's something for everyone. Everyone is welcome at the JCC. Join us and be part of a diverse community that supports your whole family's growth and happiness. Visit jccabq.org to learn more.
And this week, we're going to do a recap of good news stories that we covered over the month of October. Now, over the month, we covered a lot of very interesting stories that really dove into a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different subjects. And I really wanted to take a second to dedicate this episode to some of the great stories that we highlighted over the course of the month. And really one of the first ones I want to talk about is Ventana Ranch Elementary School in northwestern Albuquerque. They achieved Blue Ribbon status, which is a very, very big deal. The Blue Ribbon is a national award that is given out by the United States Department of Education, and it's given out to schools that based off of their academic achievement or progress they've made in closing academic gaps. And Ventana Ranch Elementary School, which was nominated by the state last year, was formally awarded the Blue Ribbon status in 2024, and they held an outdoor pep rally / ceremony honoring their achievement where they invited the entire school, the students and staff, out to the field and held a pep rally for them. They had cheerleaders from nearby Volcano Vista High School that came and performed for them, did cheers, got the kids riled up and excited. They even had a special appearance by Albuquerque Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Gabriella Blakey. She came down and talked to the students about what it meant to achieve such a high national honor like Blue Ribbon status, and really emphasized the importance of being able to go out and achieve a goal as a school and the difference she hopes that will make for the students as they continue on through their academic careers. And I also got a chance to speak to the principal of the school, Paula Garcia, and she kind of walked me through the process of what it looked like when they were working towards this Blue Ribbon status. Turned out it was a lot more demanding than I think anybody would have ever anticipated. It took about a year for them to put this entire process together. Principal Garcia really credited the work her staff did, calling her teachers, the hardest working teachers basically in all of APS, saying that they would not be able to have achieved this status without really all the work that the teachers and the staff at Ventana Ranch Elementary really did. To give you an idea of exactly what went into the application process, they had to produce a 9-page document that detailed their demographics, core curriculum, instructional methods, interventions that they're making within the school, and assessments that they're giving towards their teachers and students. Garcia called it the hardest work she's ever done, but also the most gratifying she's ever done as well. She's been an employee of APS for multiple decades, and the work she did during this process was very difficult. It was very demanding. It really asked the school to really look inwardly a lot and focus a lot on the work they had been doing for their students, and really emphasize how that work was pushing these kids towards higher academic achievement and towards their goals as a whole. And it took a long time. They started last October. They just finished a couple months ago and were able to send that off to the U.S. Department of Education, and only heard back in September of this year that they had achieved that status. When I talked to Superintendent Blakey about the achievement that they made, She said it was really exciting to showcase to the state, city, and county that APS is really doing great work. She said, quote, I talk a lot about kids believing in themselves and not always hearing that we're last in everything. And this signifies that our schools can achieve everything. And that message really resonated because too often we hear about how New Mexico really struggles with education. We often hear the tagline, we're last in education. We've heard that for many years now. But to see work like this being done and to see our public schools achieving such a grand award on such a national scale is just really awesome to see. And it was cool to see the excitement on the faces of the students. You could definitely tell that they understood how important this was. And it was gratifying to be able to share their story of how they are working to achieve such a great honor. And to see how awesome it and how excited they were that they got this recognition, not only from their principal, but also from the superintendent of APS schools as well. In addition to Ventana Ranch Elementary School, Zia Elementary School in Clovis and White Sands School at the White Sands Mission Range were also selected this year for Blue Ribbon status by the Department of Education. So 3 New Mexico schools in 1 year selected to receive this national status is a huge deal, and just awesome to see the hard work students are putting forth is coming to fruition. Real quick, I want to touch on a few of the stories that we featured in our Good News Roundups that we've had throughout several weeks. We covered UNMH. They hosted a blanket distribution event where they were handing out emergency warmth blankets, especially ahead of the winter months, to organizations that deal firsthand with unhoused individuals in the community. These emergency blankets are a great source of warmth, especially for individuals who find themselves on the streets during these cold nights, not in shelters and things of that nature. And UNMH was able to distribute a fair amount of these blankets, over 8,000 emergency blankets to be exact, that were given out to these organizations, and these organizations will then distribute those blankets to the unhoused population here in Albuquerque, which is always great to see. We also covered a few Halloween-themed events as we got closer to the end of the month. One in particular was a Halloween party that was held at Presbyterian Hospital downtown. They partnered with Spirit Halloween to hold a Halloween party for their pediatric patients. They handed out costumes, they carved pumpkins, they picked out candy and did a little bit of trick-or-treating as well. And just awesome to see those kiddos, you know, most of them struggling, dealing with treatments, things of that nature, still being able to celebrate a holiday while they were at the hospital. And we also talked a little bit about the Catholic Charities, of New Mexico. They called upon the community to help them assemble 150 trick-or-treat boo baskets that they handed out to children experiencing poverty and housing insecurity. They held an event on October 27th at Marble Brewery and their Northeast Heights Tap House, where they put together these boo baskets and then distributed them to children that are in the Catholic Charities Housing and Self-Sufficiency Program. So a lot of kids were able to get boo baskets and able to feel some Halloween cheer, get excited about the holiday towards the end of the month. Speaking of Halloween, I want to talk about another really cool event that we were able to highlight. Actually ended up making the front page, which was very cool to see. And that was a pediatric skate event that was held for patients with Thrive Skilled Pediatric Care at Skatomania on towards the end of the month. It was on October 21st. This is the second annual rolling Halloween party that Thrive has hosted for patients and their families, also for their staff members as well. Skatomania owner Courtney Ballew, donated the facility, donated staff time, donated skate rentals to this party that was held at Skatomania. Hundreds of families that received care from Thrive Pediatric Care attended the event. They were decked out in Halloween costumes. You had Super Mario, you had Sonic the Hedgehog, you had families that were dressed up in video game themed costumes like from Fallout, if anybody knows that. You had so many different costumes that were on display, and it was awesome to see all the kiddos involved with Thrive Pediatric Care be able to get out there on the roller rink, skate with their family members, have a great time, and be able to enjoy themselves. We featured a really cool photo package on that, and it was just awesome to see the smiles on their faces, all the great things that they were doing. We also talked about the AP Albuquerque Community Foundation activating their emergency fund for people who were victims of the flooding in Roswell. For our listeners who may not have heard of the full story, 5 inches of water was dumped onto Roswell towards the end of October, resulting in a lot of property damage, a lot of flooding, a lot of people displaced because of that flooding. And the Albuquerque Community Foundation activated its Emergency Action Fund, which they have in partnership with several different community organizations around the country. And they were able to activate that, start collecting donations, start getting partners together to raise funds to give to these communities that were affected in Roswell, which is awesome to see. They had only activated their emergency fund a couple of other times. Once was during the COVID-19 pandemic. The other 2 times were during the wildfires, the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak wildfire that burned in 2022, burned over 300,000 acres in northern New Mexico. And then they activated it earlier this year over the summer when the fires from the South Fork and Salt Fires were burning near Ruidoso. They also activated the emergency fund there as well. So this is a constant source of emergency funding from the Albuquerque Community Foundation and other partner communities who come together to raise funds to be able to give them towards the victims of the Roswell flooding. So great to be able to help share their story and kind of show how New Mexicans are coming together to support those in need. 2 more stories that we covered that I really, really enjoyed and I want to take a second to highlight was a mobility clinic that was held at Highland High School at the end of October. For those who may not be keeping up with what is going on with the legislature or, bills that have been passed that are positively impacting their fellow New Mexicans, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the bill that was helped passed by Kyle Stepp, who is a New Mexico native. For those of you who are avid listeners and watchers of the podcast, you might remember Kyle. We had him on as a guest a couple episodes ago when he walked us through a story about him hiking a mountain in South America for the Range of Motion project to help get prosthetic care to those in need around the world. Kyle was a very, very integral part of helping pass a bill, the So New Mexicans Can Move Act, which mandated that state insurance plans have to cover prosthetics and orthotics equally to Medicare levels, and it also requires insurance plans to cover a second prosthetic device for amputees that are hoping to do physical activity. Kyle explained to me at the event that it used to be there was a waiting period to get a second prosthetic. It was very difficult to get prosthesis for physical activities such as running, or hiking, or really any sort of physical activity. And Kyle got together with a bunch of other amputees, insurance companies, advocates, politicians from both parties, and was able to draft legislation that not only passed the House unanimously, but passed the Senate unanimously during the 2023 legislative session. And to celebrate that achievement, they hosted this mobility clinic at Highland High School and a Highland Pool, which is right across the street, where they were offering free prosthetics for any individual who wanted to try a athletic prosthetic, such as a running blade. They were also offering prosthesis for people who wanted to try their hand at swimming. And basically the entire idea behind the mobility clinic was to show individuals that now they have access to a second prosthesis that will allow them to engage in physical activities. And these are what these devices can do for them. And I spoke to several individuals. I spoke to Noemi Gallegos, who told me that she tried out a running blade at this mobility clinic, and that was the first time she had run in 40 years. She had not run prior to that day at any point in her life. And I got to see her when she started taking her first steps with that running blade on. And at first, she had a very timid look on her face. You could tell that she was a little uncomfortable, a little uncertain on where this was going to go. But I would say probably by her fifth or sixth step, she had a gigantic smile on her face as she got more and more confidence as she was going along. And then before you knew it, I turned around and I saw her doing laps up and down the track with a running blade on. And you know, it was very inspiring to see somebody who had never experienced the sensation of running be able to run for the first time. She told me that the closest she had ever gotten prior to that was skipping. So this was definitely a big change for her. But she could not have been any happier with the experience that she had. Meanwhile, across the street at the Highland Pool, 71-year-old Bill Arroyo, who had only had his right leg amputated less than a year prior to this, was stepping into a swimming pool for the first time since he had lost his leg. And I was sitting near the pool watching Bill swim alongside his wife, Joyce. Him and his wife, Joyce, had been married for 45 years. And Joyce was emotional watching her husband swim in the pool. And when I asked her why, her answer was very poignant. She said, watching him, it's like he's regaining who he was. And those words really stuck with me because here you have a group of amputees. These are people that have experienced one of the, most bitter pills life could ever hand out to you. But they didn't let their circumstance determine their outlook and determine their determination in what they wanted to do. And for Gallegos, it was running. She didn't let her circumstances determine the fact that she couldn't run. For Bill, it was being able to get back in a pool and start swimming again. His wife told me that he's a big golfer. He can't wait till he gets a prosthetic that'll allow him to get back on the golf course. And it was so inspiring to see these people who were willing to overlook their deficiencies, overlook the fact that they might not be able to do things traditionally as we all do, find a different way to approach an activity and be able to accomplish it. And you just saw that play out with patient after patient that came. These are people missing, legs, arms, trying these prostheses out for the first time and being able to see that, with the right equipment, they can get back to living a life of normalcy for them. And it was awesome to see. The last story I want to highlight before we end this episode dates all the way back to the beginning of the month during the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta, and it deals with Peggy Roach, who is an 86-year-old woman who lived in Albuquerque dating all the way back to when the first Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta took place in the 1970s. And Peggy's dream, ever since she saw the first balloon fiesta, was to fly in a balloon. But she never got the opportunity to do that. And as she got older, she experienced a lot of medical problems that led to her being wheelchair dependent. And you would normally think that being wheelchair dependent would pretty much dash anybody's dream of being able to ever fly in a hot air balloon. I'm sure for a lot of our listeners that live in Albuquerque, they understand just how small those baskets are. I mean, it's uncomfortable for people who are even standing in balloon baskets to really be comfortable. But for anybody in a wheelchair to be able to do that, when you would think it would be almost impossible. But Peggy's son was able to track down, one of her sons, I should say, was able to track down a hot air balloon that could accommodate somebody in a wheelchair. Her son, Clark, actually got in contact with Cottywampel Ballooning, who has a ADA-compliant wheelchair hot air balloon basket, and scheduled a ride for his mother, who now had moved from Albuquerque, was living in an assisted living facility in southern Colorado, to take her on a hot air balloon ride. Clark was pretty proud of himself that he was able to organize all this. The only problem is his mom did not want to go on a hot air balloon ride that was not at the balloon fiesta. She wanted to fly with all of the other balloons. That's what she wanted to do. So that's what they did. Clark got back in contact with the pilot, was able to reschedule the balloon ride for the 2024 balloon fiesta. And on the Friday morning before the last weekend of fiesta, Peggy Roach, standing alongside her family, comprised of her 2 sons, her daughter, her grandchildren, some great-grandchildren, watched as the crew of the Cottywomple blew hot air into the balloon as the balloon inflated, came to life. And with the biggest smile I think I've seen in a really, really long time, she got loaded onto the balloon basket by her son Clark, was strapped into place, and flew on that balloon with her children, her son Jay Roach, her son Clark, and her daughter Kim. All flew with her. Peggy said her dream was not only to fly on that hot air balloon, but to make sure that her kids were alongside her when she did get a chance to fly on that balloon. I got a chance to talk to Peggy after she was done with the balloon ride. Her son Jay recounted the ride for me. They flew over downtown. They were literally within feet of the skyscrapers that are downtown in Albuquerque. They flew down into the bosque. They got so close that their pilot was able to stick his hand out and touch the leaves of the trees as they were flying along. And they landed about an hour and a half after they took off from the field. And I asked Peggy what that experience was like, and she just said fabulous. It was a fabulous experience for her. She had never been a part of anything like that before. And when I asked her son Jay about it, he said, seeing our mom, a person who is in a wheelchair, fly, it was amazing. And then he said something that really stuck out. He said, she can't walk, but she can fly. And her kids helped her make that dream come true for her. And it was awesome to be able to be there to watch Peggy take off and to talk to her after the experience was over, and just see how, when you have a dream, regardless of how long it takes for that dream to come true, it eventually comes true at some point, and all that waiting is rewarded. So great to see all that come to fruition for her. And those are just a few of the good news stories that we covered in October. We covered a lot more than that, but those were the ones I wanted to highlight here on this episode. November is already off to a quick start. We've already had a few events. We have a few more coming up. So a lot of excitement building around the stories we have coming this month for you guys. Be sure to check them out on your subscriptions, whether that is the print or digital subscriptions of the Albuquerque Journal. Good news is always coming our way. And for anybody who is interested in sending us any tips about upcoming good news stories, don't forget you can send those tips to goodnews@abqjournal.com. That's goodnews@abqjournal.com. We read through all of our tips. There's never a bad one we've ever been sent. If you have something that you want to brag about that's going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico, feel free to send us an email and let us know. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Good News Conversations, and I'll see you in the next episode.